Well, hello, everybody, and this is Auntie, and I want to talk about a man who entered as security, stayed as a protector, and was trusted like family. Let's talk about the life, the legacy of Bill Bray.
A sweet old auntie. Thank you, subscribers to my nieces and nephews and all of y'all who have been here through the long haul. Shall we get into it? Oh, yes, we shall. It's time for auntie to rise. Sweet old. It's time for auntie to rise. It's time for auntie to
Well, welcome back, everybody, and this is Auntie. Thank you so much for being here. If you like what I say out here on these YouTube streets, go ahead and hit that subscribe. Welcome to all of the new subscribers. Thank you so much for doing so. Turn on your notification bell so that when I go live, you go live with me right downtown in the comments section. To all of my members, my nieces and nephews who have been here with me for the long haul, thank you all so much for your continued support. Y'all, this movie, Michael, has really had an effect on me. And as I begin to reminisce and to think about this movie and the effect that it had on me, there was someone who stood out in the crowd, and that was Bill Bray. Now, listen, because when I put everything together, what has been documented, what people observe, what Michael himself said, and now what the Michael film chose to show, the story of Mr. Bill becomes something much more deeper than a bodyguard standing in the background relationship. This is about presence, protection, and the kind of quiet authority that doesn't need to announce itself. So, before all the fame, before the global stardom, before the world knew the name Michael Jackson the way it does now, there was a man named Bill Bray. And Bill Bray didn't come from entertainment. He wasn't a studio manager, a publicist, or someone trying to get close to fame. He came from structure, from discipline, and from his time in the Los Angeles police force as a police officer, where his job was to assess risk, control situations, and keep order when things around him were anything but calm. That's the man that Joe Jackson brought into his family's world. I think that what Joe Jackson didn't realize is that in some ways Bill will replace him. But anyway, I digress and let's continue on. So look, y'all, back in the early days of the Jackson Five, when the boys were still little boys, okay, when they were young, still traveling, still being introduced to the attention that most adults wouldn't know how to handle, Bill Bray came in as as security. Um, Legend says at first it was a part-time job, just protection, just presence. But how many of y'all know that a part-time job doesn't survive in an environment like that? Because as Michael and the Jacksons' fame grew, so did the need for control. And Bill Bray didn't operate like someone passing through. He stayed. He became a constant to Michael. He was there as Michael grew, from a child performer into a global figure. As more people began to surround him, people with business interests, expectation, and access requests. But in the middle of all of that, Bill Bray became more than what he was hired to be. If you had an opportunity to see the movie Michael, you will see this bodyguard becomes father figure, protector care, like caregiver, confidant. You will see that in this movie. And as I began to think about it, I was like, I would be remiss not to even discuss it because he was that influential in Michael's life, and he was absolutely weaved into the fabric of his history and of his stardom. So I could not help but come out and have a conversation about it. I do want to say thank you to everyone who commented in the comment section on my last video about this. Um, Many of you all said that my video helped you to make the decision to go and see the movie. And I'm so happy and delighted that my video changed that for you. So thank you. A lot of you all confirmed a lot of what I said. And that just feels great as a content creator, as someone that you trust to bring you an unfiltered, honest review. Thank you. I just want to make sure I get that in there. But anyway, let's get back to Bill Bray. So, in the early 80s, as we saw in the film Michael, he was the head of security. But even that title didn't fully explain to me what he actually did. He controlled access, he monitored the environments, and he decided who got close and who didn't to Michael. Not only did he monitor the environments and control access outside of the Jackson compound, I thought, and you all let me know downtown in the comments section if you agree, he also monitored and controlled that access of Michael's dad. He decided who got close, who didn't, and most importantly, he was one of the few people who could say no. I think in a lot of ways, he helped Michael to get to a no as well. Multiple credible sources, including outlets like People and historical summaries from um, encyclopedias, consistently describe him not as just a bodyguard, but as Michael's confidant, a father figure, and a stabilizing presence in his life. Someone who didn't just protect Michael physically, but in this film, he helped Michael maintain structure around a life that was constantly being pulled in every direction. And Michael knew exactly who he was to him. And one of the clearest, oh, wait a minute, hold on. Let me bring him up on the screen. Wait a minute now, Auntie. How dare you? There they go. Y'all know I gotta always bring them up to the screen, right? Got to bring them up to the screen. They gotta be seen on the screen. In one of the clearest pieces of documented evidence, Michael wrote Bill Bray a handwritten note thanking him, not just for protection, but for guidance, for being present, for being someone he could rely on. And that kind of acknowledgement doesn't come from an obligation for Michael. It came from trust, and that trust was rare. Let me share that with you all if I have that. Did I bring that up? No, I did not. So let me read to you what was said in the note. Please forgive me for not having that available charger to my inability to sometimes upload things in the right format. So in a letter, it says Bill. And of course, it was on letter legal head. Let me see. No, it won't come up. Okay. Sorry, y'all. It says, it's been a long, long road we have traveled throughout the years, concert tours, meetings, dignitaries, kings, and queens of castles, touring around the world twice, making people happy through the gift and love of music. I'm coming of age now. Wow. So that just concretes how long he had been there. Now that Michael was letting him know, hey, look, I'm a big boy now, okay? I'm a man now. So he says, I'm coming of age now and really realize the importance of true love. For me, he said, Joseph never ever had time for me. Y'all know I got to gather myself right because I'm a crybaby. He only saw me as a way for him to make money. And as you know, mother was a perfect mother, but I never was with her. My childhood was on stage away from mother. He says, what I'm simply trying to say is thank you for being a father. I don't know what would have happened to me if you were not around. I love you, MJ. How freaking sad. Bill Bray was trusted by Joe, a man known for being strict and controlled. And he was trusted by Michael as well, who lived in a world where trust was not easily given. That overlap placed Bray in a position very few people ever reached in Michael's life. He wasn't in a room, but he helped Michael define the room. People who observed them described him as disciplined, firm, and respected. Not someone trying to be liked, someone focused on keeping things in order. He didn't give interviews, he didn't write books about Michael, he didn't step into the spotlight. In a world where everybody, or at least many people, who were close to Michael eventually told their stories publicly, Bill Bray remained very private about it. And in my opinion, that silence tells something. It tells you that he wasn't there for the attention, he was there for a purpose. But like many things in Michael's life, that stability didn't remain unchanged. So by the mid 1900s, reports confirmed that Michael and Bill Bray were no longer as close as they once were. Let me show you all some pictures of Bill Bray and Michael together. As you can see, the two of them are like really aged together. I love this pic. Michael Jackson, Bill Bray. This, I think, is my fave. It's a true reflection, in my opinion, of their relationship. And this is the Michael that we saw in the movie. He was with him when he was young. There was a segment in the movie where Michael got really upset with his dad, who was trying to have one of those meetings that he always had, and Michael ran out of the meeting, and Bill, of course, was standing outside waiting on Michael with bated breath, ready to do whatever it was that he needed him to do. And he said, "Where do you want to go?" When Michael got in the car, and he said, "Just drive." And we saw the two of them up on a mountaintop on one of those windy roads that you all got in California. And excuse me, and Michael just began to share his heart, his frustrations, where he was, how he was feeling, wanting to break free. And in the movie, you could see that he was a tender man, a man of little words, but a man of full of wisdom to give to a young man like Michael, making sure that he didn't cross lines with him, say something that may have gotten back the wrong way. Know how that is. He didn't really meddle, but he saw Michael in his vulnerability because he served him. And most people who serve are the people who can see deepest in your soul. They can see in your life. They can see past the smiles and through the tears. And that's what became to him. So that's why I believe he never did interviews, never tried to get anything from Michael, because he saw him in his humanity. He saw him at his weakest points. He saw him in his vulnerability. He also saw the celebrations and all of that, right? But I'm sure with a person who was as complicated as Michael was, he saw him waver when the lights go out. He saw him in every area of his life. And so he didn't have a reason to exploit him, to use him, because I believe that he saw him as a father and he saw Michael as a son. As I said, his silence told it all. It tells you he wasn't there for any attention. He was there for a purpose. Um, of course, as I said, the relationship did not stay the, the, the same. Michael and Bill Bray were no longer as close as they once were. Um, Communication slowed down between the two of them, distance formed, and there was no public explanation, no interview, no official statement, no detailed account of what caused the shift. It was just a quiet separation. And in 2005, Bill Bray passed away at the age of 80. By that time, he and Michael, right, had been closely connected for years. But credible reports indicate that Michael was deeply affected by his passing. Because, look, when somebody is that close to you, regardless of the distance, you don't erase decades of presence. You don't erase someone who was there from the beginning. Now, fast forward to how the story was told in Michael. Bill Bray is portrayed by Keelan Durrell. Jones. Let me bring him back up. Let me bring him to the forefront. He is an actor known for roles in television series like Succession and other projects where he built a steady career without being overexposed. And that casting choice really mattered in this case because Bill Bray was never meant to be flashy. He was not meant to be felt. In interviews, Kylan described, and I'm hoping I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He described landing the role as a dream, and his approach was not to play Bill Bray as loud or dominant, a dominant presence in Michael's life, but as something quieter, someone more grounded. He focused on Bray's fatherly energy, protective nature, and quiet authority, and he worked to build natural chemistry with Jafar, who played Michael. So when you look at the film's portray, something becomes very, very clear. Just one second, y'all. In my opinion, y'all can see this movie has affected your auntie. I mean, when I say I loved it, I loved it. And so, as I was saying, when you see, the portrayal, right, it became very clear to me, and I'm hoping that it became clear to you all. The movie shows Bill Bray as a constant presence, a steady protector, a grounding father-like figure, someone who watched, listened, and stepped in when he was needed. And that part aligns strongly with what is actually documented about him. But the film also does what films do, right? It compresses time. I noticed that someone has said in my comment section that they enjoyed the movie, but they thought that it was compressed. But even in that compression, they were able to get the story, and they're glad that they saw it. In a compressed time, they still were able to create emotional conversations. They filled in moments that were never publicly recorded because the truth of the matter was that Bill did not leave behind interviews or detailed accounts of his thoughts. There were, unlike Jafar being able to look back at Michael's notes and writings and footage, Bill did not leave behind interviews or detailed accounts of his thoughts. There were no transcripts of private conversations. So the film interpreted what his presence likely felt like rather than reproducing exact documented dialogue. So it also may have simplified or avoided certain realities, right? Like the distance that formed between him and Michael in the mid 1990s, because there are no confirmed public details explaining that shift. So when you look at this from an honest perspective, the portrayal of Bill Bray and Michael is accurate in its essence, in my opinion, interpreted in detail. And I thought that that was really important because, as I said in my review about Jafar and Michael, you have to, as an actor, and I was glad that they made the choices that they did because these people were able to give us the essence of who these people were. I mean, when you think about it in its totality, that had to have been a hard job as a casting director because you would have, I'm sure they had many people who could have played these roles and played them successfully. But I think what the directors was looking at is past someone's talent, but their ability to get the essence. If I ever get big and blow up and somebody plays Auntie, I want them to get the essence of who I was. Yes, I have notes. I have diaries and I journal. So, when you think about your life, right? And I ain't nothing big. I'm a YouTuber child, please. I ain't even got 100,000 subscribers yet. I'm trying for it, but I don't know if I'll ever see it. But when I do, I'm going to be happy. But when you think about it, you never know what kind of life or what kind of legacy you leave behind. And if someone were to play me, they would have a lot of inside information and details about what made me click, what made me stop clipping, what made me shut down, what made me pull back, what made me push forward. They would be able to, through, of course, my journaling and everything, get the essence of who I am. Not who you see, that comes on YouTube. Used to be every day, but I've slowed down now. I told y'all I'm writing a book, so I'm slowing down. And then I was dealing with these allergies, okay? So I've slowed down, but I say that to say I'm more than what you see when I'm out here cussing people out or giving words of encouragement. But unless you really know me and you know my thoughts, then you can't really get the essence of who I am, and one day who I was. That part that shows the actor, right, of as being really disciplined, protective, trusted, and steady. That's what it showed about Bill. That he was disciplined, protective, trusted, and steady. And I went and looked at multiple sources to confirm this information. Plus the letter that I couldn't upload. Jesus. And I know why I couldn't upload it now, because it was just a pic anyway. I hate when I beat myself up. But multiple sources, and they were all consistent in their description of him. What the film fully could not show, because the information just didn't exist publicly, are the exact conversations, the exact decisions, and the exact reasons that changed later on in their lives. So it fills a gap. It fills in the gaps the only way that it could, by showing the presence of the man. And so basically, when you step back and look at the full picture, the documented history and film portrayal together was a pattern that became very clear to us as the audience. There was a period in Michael's life where structure, boundaries, and control access were firmly in place. A period where someone stood between him and the outside world, not for fame, not for money, but for protection, and that was Bill Bray. Later in life, others came into Michael's life: managers, doctors, security, but the role that Bill played and held in Michael's life was not only replicated in the same way, it just wasn't. Not in authority, not in history, not in trust. And that's not a speculation. That's what basically all the stuff that I researched reflected. So when people say Mr. Bill, understand, y'all, that what it really means is it just wasn't a nickname. It was a man who entered as security, stayed as a protector, and was trusted like family. And the movie clearly depicted that became one of the most important and least publicly understood figures in the life of Michael Jackson. May he rest in peace. Thank y'all so much for coming out and sharing this with me. I love y'all. Let me know downtown in the comment section what y'all thought about the depiction of Bill Bray. And until we meet again, y'all be safe out there in those streets and in the water. Bye, y'all.